You are listening to the Tricorder Transmissions, episode 23. And now, here are Craig and Jeff.
Hello and welcome to the Tricorder Transmissions. I am Craig Cohen.
And I'm Jeff Hewlett.
And this week, Jeff, we are talking about A Taste of Armageddon.
Yeah. This is a really fun one, and some really great headgear on some of these lackeys that wander around. So I have a really funny thing that I wanted to mention
by
to
the
you.
way.
Yeah. Good Lord. Yeah, Happy New Year. This is not our first episode of the New Year, but our first proper episode of the New Year. Yes, we had the
supplemental discussion, and if you haven't listened to our supplemental log on Space Seed, stop this, listen to that, and then come back, and we'll still be here.
Yeah, it's I'm not usually one to toot my own horn, but I have to say I think the Space Seed Extended it sounds excellent. It came out really nice, and our friend Chris, who's on that episode, was a very excellent contributor.
Oh my God, I think he is going to be our go-to Star Trek expert on a podcast where we claim to sort of, be as close to, we're striving to be Star Trek experts. Here we have a bona fide Star Trek expert. This guy has seen every episode of every series.
Yeah, and his knowledge of the series that we haven't watched a lot of is pretty impressive. So when we talk about episodes in other series that are related back to the original series, his input was exceptional.
Yeah. No, it was a very fun discussion, and I look forward to talking to Chris a lot more on this program.
Yeah, I'm sure it'll be very soon. We'll have him back on. But funny story. I don't know if you've heard this.
Okay.
This is pretty recent, but a politician in North Carolina, I believe, he was on the Indian Trail Town Council, I believe, which is near Charlotte, North Carolina, resigned from his job. And that in itself is not funny, but his resignation letter was written in Klingon.
Oh.
I thought that was pretty hysterical.
Oh, did they have to bring in a translator?
Let's see. Let me see.
That is really funny.
Yeah, apparently the board was not amused. So his name was David Waddell, or Waddell, I guess, Waddell, and the translation was, "Perhaps today is a good day to resign," which is pretty funny. It doesn't really specify. He seems like he was kind of like a funny guy. It said there's a quote from him saying that people that were on the council kind of didn't get him.
Yeah.
So he figured he'd have one last laugh. So good
awesome.
on him. Good on him. So a lot of Klingon popping up nowadays. I keep seeing people in Klingon outfits and talking and writing in Klingon, and you got me that wonderful Klingon book for Christmas.
Yeah.
Much appreciated.
To get us prepared for the big Star Trek convention, I figure if one of us knows how to speak Klingon, it will help.
I can't guarantee that I'll be ready for that, but I'll give it my best shot. Oh, man.
All right. And also, I think there was also some kind of Klingon-related Christmas book that came out in December that I remember seeing pop up in my Facebook timeline.
Yeah, we'll have to look into that and figure out what it is for the next episode.
Yeah.
We'll get some info.
Yeah, so you want to talk about A Taste of Armageddon real quick before we get into the meat of the episode?
Yeah, why not? I'm tasting for a little Armageddon.
Okay.
So, especially after these snowpocalypse that we've just survived, could have been Armageddon. So, our air date for the original episode was February 23rd of 1967, and our remaster was December 15th of 2007.
Okay, and I have a real quick write-up here. On a diplomatic mission, the crew visits a planet that is waging a destructive war fought solely by computer simulation. but the casualties, including the crew of the USS Enterprise, are supposed to be real.
Wow. How come
Yes.
every time somebody says diplomatic mission, my mind says to Alderaan? I don't know. It was in my mind. I'm like, don't say it. Don't say it.
Yeah. And how come also those diplomatic missions always seem to go bad?
Yeah, well, that anytime it starts out diplomatic, they have to kill 45 minutes, so something has to go wrong, right?
Yeah.
So.
They should do those like little if it was nowadays, if Star Trek was airing nowadays, they'd probably do webisodes where it's just basically, 5 minutes of, when things go right.
Yeah. Yeah, that would be really cool. Whatever new series eventually ever does come out, I hope they do that kind of webisode thing too. Like a lot of other shows are doing that now, so that would
be awesome.
Neat.
There's so much potential.
Yeah.
But I guess we should buckle up and get ready to talk a Taste of Armageddon.
All right, man. So let's get this episode started. We're going to start playback in
3, 2, 1.
Exterior of the ship, 3192.1. Star Cluster NGC321. Very nondescript.
Isn't the oh no, I'm thinking of another planet. Does this planet actually have a name?
Miniar 7.
Okay.
And they're going to inform them of their friendly intentions. But as we get a little pan shot of the bridge here in a minute, we're going to notice something about this episode that we've kind of been getting used to. And here's an interesting fellow.
This is giving me flashbacks of an episode that we did a couple weeks ago with sort of the stuffy Starfleet, ambassador or, some higher up.
Yeah, right now he's just an ambassador. He's yet unidentified. And, we're getting a code 710. A code 710, which is something we haven't heard of before.
Yeah, it's a do not approach.
Yeah, which is interesting to me because why would they have a set of codes that was universal like that? If this was a Starfleet code, I mean, how would we know? How would this other planet know to use code 710? And how would they understand it on the Enterprise unless this was predetermined, across the universe, so that everybody knows what a 710 is?
Well, they might have opened up like the Federation wiki.
Oh, that's true. They probably had the internet, didn't they?
Or whatever the internet is in the 23rd century.
And there's Scotty hanging out on the bridge again. What the heck are you doing up there?
Well, I think Scotty is so used to sitting in that captain's chair that he's just on the ready.
Up, and here we are, yet another superior officer taking command away from Kirk, flexing his muscles. Yeah. And there's Spock. Apparently. Going over our code 710 again, and we're going to yellow alert. Another random red shirt.
Yeah, and I kind of like the little speech that Kirk gives there, saying we're going in
friendly or not,
which is kind of cool, and I really like the the way that Shatner delivered that. It showed that Kirk really doesn't enjoy non-peaceful confrontations.
Yeah, but did you notice the ambassador said that they need the port and he'll do whatever he has to do to take it?
Mm-hmm.
That doesn't seem very Starfleet to me.
No.
So we're going to find out here that this is yet another episode with no Sulu in it.
Yeah.
But yeah, the funny thing is that the guy that replaces him on the bridge actually has a few lines of dialogue. He's not just a throwaway guy, so why wasn't Sulu in the episode to begin with?
Yeah, you know what? That's one thing that I would love to get to the bottom of is to find out the logic behind those cast decisions.
Yeah. So they've made it to Miniar 7. They are in orbit, and I'm putting together a landing party to establish diplomatic relations at all costs.
Mm-hmm. We're learning that they have a pretty advanced civilization, which is kind of will be kind of cool because the last couple episodes we've seen on the Return of the Archons. It was kind of an older older style environment. So this should be a pretty interesting sort of futuristic look.
And we've got a reference to a Starfleet vessel that's missing in space. So this is another interesting part here. So the ambassador believes that he should be on the away team, and Kirk says, "Nope, you're not allowed on the away team, and that's my decision to make." So this ambassador's authority is somewhat limited. Kirk still has some sort of control on the ship, so possibly military choices are his. Maybe?
Yeah. I think ultimately, I guess Kirk's got the power to say, hey, until I can establish that this that we're not in danger or you're not in danger, and it almost seems like it's a captain's CYA.
Yeah. So here's a cool part too, that he's actually leaving Scotty in charge of the ship, and we're actually hearing him say that he's leaving Scotty in charge, which is pretty cool, actually. I don't know if we've ever actually heard Kirk tell Scotty that he's... Oh, here's a really cool remastered shot down on the planet here. Saw some monorails going by.
Yeah, it kind of reminded me of the sort of cityscape that we saw in, like, Death Race 2000, if you know that movie from the 70s with David Carradine and Stallone.
And I believe that remastered shot of the exterior replaces the a matte painting, the Albert Whitlock matte painting.
Yeah.
That I think this was the last matte painting that he created for the show that was used in this particular episode. So he didn't create any more after this. So I believe that's modeled after his matte painting, though, isn't it?
Yeah, I believe they definitely used his matte painting as sort of a guide, which again sort of shows how tasteful they were in these remasters. Yeah. But I mean the integration there is really well done. I mean when you see them on the set there with the new effects, it looked pretty seamless for the budget they had. I mean, this isn't a motion picture budget on these remasters.
So we're not going to get any answer right away as to why they were warned off. Kirk has been asking, what was the reasoning behind us being warned away, and she kind of dismisses it.
Yeah.
And takes him to see this person by the name of Anon 7.
Yeah. That's the woman's Barbara Babcock, who we've actually heard before. She was the voice of Trelane's mother in The Squire of Gothos.
Oh.
And her voice will pop up again on Assignment Earth and the Tholian Web. And we'll see her in Plato's Stepchildren. So we're going to see a lot more and hear a lot more from Barbara Babcock.
Very cool. Another interesting, we're talking about people who are in this episode. Kirk just mentioned some of the people who are in the away team we don't really recognize. One of them is a guy that he calls Lieutenant Osborne, who is the actor who portrays him is not credited in any sources.
Interesting.
So it's pretty interesting. And he is incorrectly credited as regular extra Frank Da Vinci in the Star Trek Concordance, but it's proven incorrect. It's actually not Frank Da Vinci.
Wow. I don't know how I'd handle that if I was slighted or omitted in such a way.
It must have been a little bit of a slight, right? I mean, he features pretty prominently in the episode.
Yeah.
So we've skipped over a little bit here. They said they've been at war for 500 years, right? That's a long time. And total of 1 to 3 million dead each year from direct enemy attacks. So over 500 years, that's a lot of dead people.
Yes.
So one has to wonder how their respective societies on each planet in this war have even subsisted for this long.
Yeah.
With that many deaths. I mean, you don't think they could reproduce fast enough, to take those kinds of losses over that amount of time.
Yeah, unless, as grim as this sounds, it's
There's
mostly
something else going on.
Mostly young people and old people being killed.
Cool.
So this episode was written by Robert Hammer, who wrote for The Fugitive, The Wild Wild West, Voyage to the Bottom of the Sea. He spoke of this episode in Starlog in the 90s and said, at the time, the military was developing neutron bombs. These were designed to kill people without harming the buildings. It was like big business going to war. Don't destroy the factories, just kill the workers. I thought it would be terrible if a neutron bomb were developed. It would take all the devastation out of war and just leave death. That was the whole idea of the script when I walked into Gene Kuhn's office. So a little early insight into what the writer was thinking.
Now that brings up an interesting question. If they were to drop a neutron bomb, would all the people be burning doing the neutron dance? So, anyway, actually, on a serious comment, that was kind of a goof. But the computers that we're seeing in this room that was just opened up, these strategic war computers, were also used in the menagerie, and they'll be seen on board the shuttlecraft in the Immunity Syndrome.
Cool.
These big computers were reused and will be reused again. And an interesting side note about this, this is another product of the times these shows were written. In the 60s, when these shows were written, computers really were that big.
Yeah.
They would take up entire rooms. And this is supposedly the future. So this is a product of 60s writing projecting what computers would look like in the future. And here we are now in the 2000s. And we know that a computer, a smartphone, is thousands of times more powerful than computers in the 60s were that were the size of entire rooms. So if this really were our future, computers wouldn't look a thing like that.
Yeah, it's funny, how many things Star Trek sort of got right and how many things are off. And it's more a credit to the ideas of the writers because, I think some of these ideas were just destined to happen. Whereas, I'm not sure when the whole, futurist movement started where you have these scientists that they solely sort of base their practice on, speculating on what the future will be like. And Hollywood seems to work with them a lot. Spielberg and his Minority Report sort of really tried to, create a real solid idea of what the future would be like. And, I'd imagine how this show would have been if they had some of those minds consulting back then.
It would have been quite different. So we've learned that 500,000 people have been killed in this attack that's occurred while they're all standing around here talking. So fusion bombs had materialized over certain targets that were supposedly nearby. And Spock is very confused because they're not able to detect any actual explosions in the vicinity. So we've come to find out that this warfare is waged via computer simulation, and the people who are marked as destroyed by the computer simulations actually have to report to disintegration chambers and actually die.
Yeah, what a sort of grim scenario that is.
It is pretty grim, and Spock actually says it seems pretty logical, though he does not approve of it. But it does seem pretty efficient, doesn't it? Because it does preserve the buildings, so you can whack the people and not have to rebuild all of these cities that are constantly being destroyed. It does seem to be more of an orderly and clean way to wage war.
Yeah, but you're basically waging a war that really has no end game.
Right, there's no stakes.
But there's also really no potential for it to ever end.
Right, and I think Kirk actually mentions that later on. And so we've also come to find out that the reason why they warned them off in the first place was because as soon as they were in orbit around this planet, the Enterprise was considered fair game for these war simulations and now has been marked destroyed by a simulated satellite explosion. And fade to commercial.
Yeah, and I think this is, if you can, in any story, you can sort of trace the mistake that a character makes. This would be their mistake, was involving the Enterprise and sort of, getting Kirk invested.
Yeah, and this is interesting. Captain's log entry, says Captain's log delayed. So it means he put it in after they actually got out of the scenario, I imagine.
Yeah.
And we're just hearing the replay now. So interesting there that we're getting that. And here again, we're going to see Captain Kirk staying really tough.
Yeah.
In a really difficult situation.
Yeah. So they're basically being held now, against their will until the scenario plays out.
Yep. So another dialogue exchange here from between Kirk and she called herself MER3 or MER3. What did she call it?
7?
Oh, that was Anon 7. That's the guy.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. May 3.
May 3, and we've learned that she has also been marked as killed in this thing. So, and she's got to report to the disintegration chamber within 24 hours. Interesting, they use hours there.
Yeah.
As well on that planet, right? It's they're using Earth time.
Yeah. That is kind of interesting. You'd think that everything would just be based on Stardate.
Yeah, or their own unit of time
Mm-hmm.
on that planet. But I guess that's a little too much to expect the audience to take in.
Yeah, an hour is an hour, whether you call it an hour or not.
And Kirk is insisting that he wants to see a non-7. He's not going to bring the crew of the Enterprise down for disintegration. He wants to see a non-7 and discuss this issue further. So that lamp that's hanging there makes another appearance in another episode.
Oh, a recycled prop?
Yeah, another recycled prop. I believe it's in Kirk's brother's room in Operation Annihilate a couple episodes from now. I believe that's where it shows up.
This is sort of the start of, some great Scotty stuff in this episode.
Yeah, I was going to say that too.
I mean, he really is, a standout here.
Definitely.
So this is kind of interesting here. Because if I remember correctly, is this where we have the fake Kirk voice?
Yes, we do. So, yeah.
And if you notice, there's a little machine there.
Yep.
That is actually doing the voice changing.
Yeah.
And that was something I sort of learned during my research is, a lot of people just think that he's somehow mimicking Kirk, but
no, yeah.
That pan from that machine sort of sets up the idea that, hey, this is some kind of, technology that allows you to mimic somebody's voice.
Yep. So Scotty is quick enough on his feet to realize what's going on here, and he's going to have the computer analyze the voice, and the computer's going to say, nope.
Yeah.
Yeah, this is a 98% chance, I believe, that it's a fake voice.
Yeah. And I think that also really shows that, Scotty's in tune with his captain.
Yep.
And the whole shore leave story that's presented to him, it just doesn't ring true.
Yeah, it sounds like a wash. And McCoy was a little emotional there, so they had a little discussion beforehand where, McCoy was having some trouble accepting what was going on, and Scotty was saying very cool and level-headed. So we can see why Kirk is quick to leave Scotty in charge of the Enterprise when he's not away.
Yeah.
Very, very trustworthy. And Scotty even says, what do you want me to do, Doctor? You want me to just open fire? Mm-hmm. And, Bones like, oh, no, of course I wouldn't want you to do that. But very interesting exchange there. Something we also haven't talked about yet that I'm going to mention
these
is
guards that look like soft serve ice cream.
Yeah, no. But what we're seeing now is the introduction of another Spock special power.
Yeah,
he's mind controlling this guard through a wall using his telepathy that supposedly all Vulcans possess. So look, he's actually going to be sliding his hands across the door and guiding this guard over to the lock and having him put his little key on it and open up the door.
Yeah, I guess this is like the Vulcan version of the Jedi mind trick.
Yep, essentially. And we'll see this again in another episode in the future, used pretty similarly. So now they've got their the disruptor and some kind of a weird-looking little door key, and they're going to go on a little mission to get the communicators and weapons back. So they're going to try not to kill anybody, but if they're forced to kill, Spock kind of tacitly agrees. Apparently not happy with that, but understanding that there may be no choice in the matter. Interesting lighting in this hallway. Every color you can imagine of the spectrum. Purple, red, green, blue, all strewn across the wall. So they must have some gels on all their lights there, just kind of for the heck of it.
Yeah.
Right?
It kind of gave this area sort of a high school theater production feel for me.
It does. It does. Or that, or some kind of a weird high school dance.
Yes.
So now we are also going to see another weird-looking piece of machinery that looks like nothing more than a rotating door, but we're going to find out that this is a disintegration machine.
Yeah.
So, and Spock is going to state the obvious here in a minute, that people go in, but they do not come back out.
Yeah, it's like a Roach Motel for humans.
It's a one-button operation. Boom. Gone. But we're seeing that they're even putting their own uniformed guards in there. Wouldn't you think they'd have the guy go in there in some kind of nondescript uniform so they could save the uniform for somebody else who comes to replace him? Now they have to make a whole new uniform just because they had to disintegrate the guy with his uniform on.
Yeah, but I mean, if you die in battle, they don't take your uniform off and give it to somebody else.
Well, they've made this whole process really efficient. Wouldn't that be one of the efficiencies? I mean, save a little money here.
You'd think so.
Maya, there she is. He's going to grab her.
They're not going to let her go in the machine. She was reporting to die.
Nope. So, one thing that we didn't touch on, we were busy talking about other stuff, and I think it bears mentioning as part of the overall storyline, is that if the agreement between the two worlds is not upheld, meaning they don't disintegrate all of the people that they've tallied in their death toll, then real war will happen.
Yeah.
Real weapons will be fired and real devastation. So it's very important to them to actually kill off all of the 500,000 people they tallied in their death toll. So that's why the onus is on her and the Enterprise crew to be dead within 24 hours so they can avert a real war. So very high stakes there. High stakes. And according to a guy by the name of David Gerald, the computer tallies of the war dead in the episode were a statement about the Vietnam War deaths that were being registered on nightly newscasts in '67. So they used to actually rattle off how many people died each day in the Vietnam War on television. So this episode, like many others, has a little bit of a political statement attached to it.
Yeah, and I guess that's why we got so many of these sort of war-driven, episodes. A cool thing that was done for like sort of a production money saver was every time we see a disruptor destroyed, it's the same disruptor, shot from different angles. Which was kind of cool, because you read the script and the original thinking is sort of, okay, we have to build X amount of disruptors, and then, the producers said, well, hey, why do we have to build multiple ones? We can just use the same one,
over, yeah.
Hit it from different angles, and we save ourselves X amount of dollars. So it's kind of cool. I mean, it's always funny to think of this show as a show that was always on a budget.
Yep.
Whereas, Star Trek sort of developed, and I think even through the years, even if you look at some of the movies, Star Trek was always sort of on a money leash, except for maybe, these J.J. Abrams movies, which sort of, adhere to the, the blockbuster model. But even, the motion pictures they made, even by the standards back then, they weren't huge budget productions.
No, not at all.
So it's funny to think that, Star Trek has always sort of been, a little cash strapped.
Yeah. So, it's the Enterprise now is being fired upon by the planet below. And, Scotty, once again, very stoic, staying cool. The shields are okay. We're not in any immediate danger. But, we need to focus on getting the captain and the rest of the landing party out of there if they're still alive. But, McCoy says, the planet's not too big for the Enterprise to handle. We could level the entire place, which is a really interesting thing for McCoy to say. Usually he's one of the ones that, doesn't want to destroy life.
Yeah.
And would rather, save lives. But, in this case, he's got some friends down there. And he says, you know what? Yeah, blow the whole place up. And here comes the other spanner in the works. Here comes Ambassador Fox, who is going to, say, well, we have no proof that they're holding the captain and blibbity blah. And we have to, make sure we establish this diplomatic agreement with this society. And we can't just go firing at them, and I won't permit it, and blah, 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 blah.
Yeah, they seem to be really good at setting up these sort of, I don't want to call them corporate shills. But Federation shills?
Yeah. Interesting you use the term Federation, too, because this is the first episode where they actually make reference to the United Federation of Planets.
Yeah.
So, pretty cool first there. That's carried on throughout the entire rest of the television series and other continuing series and all of the movies. So, a little precedent set here that continues forward. And we're going to get another boilerplate speech here from Kirk as he's trying to convince the native to help him out and figuring out where their weapons are and the communications devices are. And here we go. Spock is going to engineer this local communicator to give it a broader range, a longer range, so that they can contact the ship. So they've been out of contact with the ship for a while. And that's pretty key, actually.
Oh, yeah.
Pretty key.
Yeah, definitely. It almost seems like a requirement.
Yeah, so Spock, once again, with his superpowers and his engineering skills, is going to save the day. So this is another episode where, without Spock, I don't know what the outcome would have been. If it wasn't for Spock, they wouldn't have been able to get out of the room in the first place, and they wouldn't have been able to contact the ship again. So, they would have had to write it a completely different way. But, interesting.
Yeah.
So did you notice the remasters add a lot of effects where effects may not have been prior to this? But did you notice that when Kirk fires the disruptor at the disintegration machine, they didn't add a laser beam effect there? Wouldn't you thought that would have been a great place to stick that in?
Yeah, and I bet you the thinking was probably like, hey, these aren't phasers. It's a different technology.
Yeah.
Yeah, I know I definitely would have been tempted to create some kind of beam if I was...
I probably would have been, too. And, this is also another episode where they inject some more humor into the script at different points. When Spock approaches the guard in front of the disintegration machine, he says... there's a multi-legged creature crawling on your shoulder. For essentially no purpose. It serves no purpose for him to say that other than to get a chuckle out of the audience. So you see it's becoming very commonplace for them to inject humor, and humor that requires a little knowledge of the characters to really be funny.
Yeah.
So if you did not understand Spock and his logical nature and his very, almost... monotone talking at times, that joke would have fallen kind of flat. But if you, unlike us, if you know who Spock is and you know about his character, that joke actually becomes quite funny.
Yes.
So
now there's a little bit of a discussion between the ambassador and Anon 7.
Yep.
Where he's, he's basically trying to put the ambassador at ease and saying, hey, that was a mistake. Our bad. We didn't mean to fire at your ship. And, come on down. Everything's fine.
Yeah. And we are going to see a very, 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 what I think is a very, very cool scene here. And so instrumental to the development of Scotty as a character. So, now we're the ambassador is kind of falling under the spell that everything's fine and it's safe to beam down, and we're going to have to take the screens down to beam him down. So Now, Fox, of course, is feeling very full of himself, feeling that his diplomacy has worked. And he's telling Scotty, you're going to assume a peaceful status. And Scotty says, no, I will not. And he doesn't care what this superior officer says. He's not changing the status of the ship, lowering the shields, until he gets word from Captain Kirk.
Yeah.
And he doesn't care if he gets court-martialed, even under the threat that's coming up. You know, they faked a message from the captain, launching attacks against the ship, and now you want us to trust them. You know, and this guy is blindly expecting them to follow his orders, and he says, nope. Scotty says, no, not going to lower the shields. I think that is awesome.
Yeah.
It goes a long way to establish how great a character Scotty is and how loyal he is to Kirk and the ship.
Yeah, and we sort of got a taste of that in like Space Seed
A bit.
where everybody refuses to yield to Khan. And I think this is really important at establishing, everybody's sort of loyalty to the captain before Starfleet.
Mm-hmm.
Which is sort of something that'll play on right through the series and the movies with this original cast, which I think is really cool because it sort of goes against the ideas we have in our society with the military and how that operates.
Yep. So here's a scene with Kirk and Anon 7, and I'm going to tell you, this scene really pisses me off. Kirk, I love Kirk in this episode. I love how stern he is with this situation and how he's just not backing down. But he makes so many ridiculous tactical mistakes in this scene. First off, the guy in Anon 7 invites him to have a drink, and he's actually going to do it, which is really not a bright idea.
Yeah.
And then number 2, there are several instances like right now where he turns his back on the guy, clearly allowing him the opportunity to either grab a weapon or signal for help, which he's going to do in a moment. And for someone with military training and the situations that Kirk has been in before, you would think that he would not turn his back on this guy for a second. But he does.
Yeah, but I think at the same time, Anon 7 hasn't really shown himself to be incredibly physical.
He hasn't, but you're also allowing him the opportunity to call in guards. And, Kirk, he needs to get the people down from the Enterprise. And here he is. He's signaling for help from his guards. And here's Kirk, still with his back to him, with his gun lowered, pouring himself a drink of an unknown liquid. He has no idea what that stuff is. No idea what's in it.
Yeah, that's definitely a good point.
A little questionable. And the scene, Kirk is actually telling Anon 7 that he could destroy the planet, and he doesn't need the Enterprise for it. So what do you think Kirk's endgame is here? So by himself with the disruptor, you think you can destroy the planet, and Kirk says it's exactly what he means.
Yeah, and there he's talking about just destroying the computers, I'd imagine.
That's a good observation.
Because if you destroy the computers, it would ultimately lead to real war.
Mm-hmm.
And, I guess you multiply that, to its logical conclusion, and that means the end of of each civilization.
Yeah, so once a real war breaks out, and this is pretty cool, Kirk, he stops and thinks, like, you know what? There's a little more humor there. You know what? You're going to have to go out this door before me because I know there's guards out there. But even though he was smart enough to understand that, he still handles the situation really poorly.
Yeah.
Why did he charge out into the hallway? I mean, he pushed Anon 7 out. He should have stayed in the doorway and just disrupted a couple of those guys that he knew were out there.
Yeah.
But yet he's going to engage in some fisticuffs and eventually be knocked out and unable to resist anymore. So there he is. Kirk's now on the ground, still alive and captured.
I don't know.
Could have handled it better.
Yeah, Kirk probably also never got over the fact that he got beat up by two guys that had heads that looked like soft serve ice cream.
Yeah, those are really strange.
I can't get past the...
Yeah.
It makes me think of like a soft serve machine or something, you know,
yeah.
with the chocolate coating on top of
Questionable headdresses all around. So now this is another interesting thing. So the ambassador beams down with another guy. Where'd he come from? And, you know, this is the second time in this episode that there is an on-screen actor who is unidentified.
Yeah.
He is not identified in the credits or any other sources from what I have been able to gather. So we don't know who this guy is. He's unnamed. He's just some clown that he's, you know, I guess he's the ambassador's attaché or whatnot. And, you know, another question that I have for you, Craig?
All right.
How were the ambassador and his attaché able to beam down without the shields being lowered?
Yeah, I assume that they were lowered at some point.
Scotty refused to lower him.
Yeah.
He said he wasn't taking the screens down.
Although they did capture Kirk, so under duress, Kirk could have given the order.
I don't know. That means they could have blown up the Enterprise and taken all the people out. I don't think Kirk would have given that order.
Yeah. But either way, it sets up this great scene where the ambassador sort of learns that
yeah, oops.
he's been duped into coming down, and he's basically has to go into one of the death machines.
Yep, and be disintegrated himself, and he's a little incredulous at that fact. And Mr. Spock has now been able to contact the ship. He has engineered this, what is that, the communicator from the planet, and he's now able to talk to Scotty on the bridge, and he's, you know, now it's the warning comes too little too late. No, under no circumstances should anybody beam down, they'll be killed.
Mm-hmm.
And Scotty says, you know, Fox and his clown have beamed down, so unfortunately, you know, he's headed for execution.
Yeah, and it's cool here. Spock tells him to, you know, to maneuver out of, or go to the, you know, the furthest point where you can, where you still have phaser capabilities. So the Enterprise, he's basically telling him to protect the Enterprise at this point.
Yeah, and importantly, he'll be out of phaser range of, or out of disruptor range from the planet.
Yeah.
Which is an important plot point for a little bit from now, for Kirk's eventual endgame.
Yeah.
And how they're going to resolve this situation. And they're putting Fox right into the disruptor, into the disintegration machine. They're not even giving him a minute to relax.
Yeah. And here we have sort of like we had a little Star Wars, or a moment that it feels like Star Wars was inspired by when, you know, in place of Chewbacca being delivered as a prisoner, we had Spock being delivered as a sort of a decoy prisoner.
Yeah, and little karate chops.
Yeah. So there's the same machine being destroyed, but
from a different angle. For
episode purposes, it is a different angle, which is really cool because that's not something you'd know unless it had been, you know, pointed out, you know, from a behind the scenes standpoint.
Yeah, and you notice how quickly Ambassador Fox turns around now. Now he's so much for diplomacy. Now he's ready to take up arms and fight his way out, you know. So Spock saves the day again and again and again and again. So now we see poor Kirk. His hair has been messed up. He's been beaten down. And looks like he's in a pretty bad spot here. You know, Anon 7 is telling me better get your people down here.
Yeah, you know what, though? I mean, I don't know the specifics of the agreement between the two warring factions, but it doesn't seem fair to hold an outside force accountable to your rules.
Right. I agree.
You know, that would be akin to somebody playing like a game of stickball in the backyard, and then, you know, the neighbor gets too close to your property line, and you say all of a sudden, hey, you have to play with us.
That's just a good idea.
It just seemed like neither party should have really been willing to escalate to real war based on an outside force.
Yeah. Well, the outgoing message, the 710 warning, should have been a little more descriptive about what would actually happen. It shouldn't just say, "Hey, don't come here." It should say, "Listen, if you come here, here's what's going to happen."
Mm-hmm.
That way, you can say, "All right, you guys were forewarned.
Yeah.
You heard the announcement. Now you've elected to come here anyway." And now you've willingly entered into this situation.
Mm-hmm.
Even then, Kirk probably wouldn't have allowed all the people on the Enterprise to be killed. But so General Order 24 has been issued
in 2 hours. So this is it.
Hours.
This is an order that Scotty's giving that can basically not be undone.
Yep, and General Order 24 translates to destroy all life on the planet. So pretty extreme, but interesting that the Enterprise has that kind of power, that it can destroy all life on a planet. A planet's a pretty big place.
Yeah, I'd imagine it's just a matter of your phasers on select targets in different regions. It really kind of illustrates the power that a starship has.
Yep.
These were, vessels that are sort of designed for exploration, but they're also, straight up war machines.
Yep. And here we go. He's going to try to, Anon 7 is trying to shoot down the Enterprise, but it's moved out of range. So guess what? The tables are turned.
Yeah, this guy has pretty much been completely tactically defeated, embarrassed, outclassed, outmaneuvered.
Yep. So, Kirk is not one to be trifled with.
Yeah, I mean, getting back to earlier on when I said, that was the fatal flaw was, was thinking that they could involve Kirk and not have things go bad for him.
Yep, I agree. And here, we're going to see what I consider to be one of the most ham-fisted fight scenes that I've seen in a Star Trek episode. This is the laziest and most inept escape attempt. Well, it actually works. This is amazing to me. We got a little more banter here before it actually goes down. Kirk is really pissing this guy off. And Kirk is counting on General Order 24 being executed. And Anon 7 really there's no way for him to get out of this situation. Actually, I was a little bit mistaken. The fight scene is, it's pretty close now.
Yeah.
I called it out a little too soon. But, Scotty is issuing some more needles here.
Yeah, he's basically saying that all of the targets that we've needed to target have been identified, and it's just a matter of systematically going through and destroying them.
Yep. And Kirk's going to take advantage. Here's this ham-fisted fight scene. Trips a guy, one sweeping motion, everybody's on their butts, and Kirk has a weapon. I mean, come on, man. Couldn't they done another take or two to make that a little more convincing? He just pushed the guys down.
Yeah, I think it was one of those things where surprise really, was the biggest factor. And here's a little comedic moment.
Yep.
Where Spock comes in and sort of has the closest thing to,
Bossy.
But also surprise, a slightly surprised look on his face where he seems slightly amused by the fact that Kirk seems to have taken care of business on his own.
Yeah, he said, I assumed you needed help, but I was in error. Yep. So everything is secure now. And we see Ambassador Fox wielding a disruptor. So big change. And, and General Order 24 is not canceled yet.
No, not until they're up on the ship and safe.
Yep. So, he's reinforcing that with Scotty now. So the situation isn't completely resolved. We need to see what Kirk's solution is.
Yeah.
We know he's got something in mind.
Yeah. And he's basically going to teach them a lesson about war.
Yeah, essentially, he's going to, he's saying that, this kind of war, neat and painless. They've had no reason to stop it because, you're pretty much just leading people into these disintegration machines. You're not actually experiencing all of the other negative impacts of war. Famines, disease spreading, loss of buildings and cities and factories, and so you're pretty much taking all of the stakes out of this war.
Yeah.
Aside from the human casualties. So, now I'm going to change the game. I'm going to go in here and I am going to destroy your automated war system and force you to have a real war. Then see what you do. I'm going to put you in a position where you've got no choice. So interesting. So Spock is pointing at, he's already knows which computers are which. There's attack computers, there's a defense computer, and there's a computer that is dedicated to keeping track of the casualties.
Yeah, and they communicate on a subspace frequency, which is kind of neat.
So that the circuit is locked, and you destroy that computer, and they're all going to go down. Yeah. So
the last couple of episodes have also really, are probably really good for people that love seeing computers destroyed.
Yeah, really, they blow up a lot of computers. So that Kirk phasered it, disrupted it, and here we go. Big explosion time. It's a heck of a fire, too. Real fire. Nice. This is the days before computer graphics, so you're seeing, real analog effects being done. Sparks and fires and smoke. So pretty cool, actually. Pretty well done.
Yeah, and they have now been given back the horrors of war.
Thanks to Captain Kirk and his infinite wisdom.
Real war with real weapons.
Yep. They'll do a lot more than just count up numbers on a computer. Destroy your cities and devastate your planet. Nice. You'll want to retaliate, but I'd start making bombs.
Yeah.
So you got to imagine they don't really have any real weapons of war right now, since all of it's done on computers. So they don't have, warships and ground troops and artillery, and they've got none of that stuff.
Yeah. There were a couple of non-canon spin-offs for this episode.
Really?
In the DC Comics version of Star Trek.
Nice.
There was a storyline called The Trial of James T. Kirk that basically revealed that peace talks on this planet broke down and a nuclear war took place, completely obliterating the planet and rendering a third of it a radioactive wasteland.
What?
And then it was also stated further in some of the Strange New World anthologies and a William Shatner novel called Preserver. But like I said, all of these are considered non-canon.
So really cool Kirk line here that I think bears repeating and remembering. As they're talking about the barbarianism and the killer in all humans. Kirk says pretty wisely, we could admit that we're all killers, but we're not going to kill today.
Yeah.
I think that's a pretty cool, and as something that I think we all live by unconsciously.
Yeah.
We all have the ability to kill, and we choose not to kill.
Yeah.
That may change tomorrow, may change next week if our lives are threatened, but we have the ability to choose whether or not we kill. And that's what sets us apart from animals and the real barbarians.
Yeah.
They kill as a way of life, and we kind of regulate and choose when we do it. So pretty cool line from Kirk, and there's a really nice comedic moment that's going to come up here once they're back safely upon the Enterprise on the bridge. We're going to get the episode wrap-up discussion between our three main characters. You got your and Scotty's also going to be involved this time around. So Spock and McCoy, and we're going to discuss a little bit about the outlook on the planet and Kirk taking a giant chance. And Spock is a little bit confused as always by human behavior. And Kirk is going to try to break it down as best as he can. Why he made the decision that he made. And to Kirk, it seems like a pretty good course of action, a calculated risk, as he says.
Yeah.
And the Armenians, they keep a very orderly society, so he assumed, that since war is a horrible, messy thing, that they would do what they could do to avoid it when faced with that being the only choice. So, he's being very human about it.
Yeah.
And Spock, of course, thinks that his feelings weren't much to go on. And Kirk, of course, says things that, that feelings sometimes are all we have to go on. And Spock says, Captain, you almost make me believe in luck, which is a pretty big line for Spock, isn't it?
Yeah.
It reminds me of the scene in First Contact where, at the end where Data says that he considered the Borg's offer for 0.68 seconds, right?
Yeah.
It's this huge thing. So our episode is now over.
Yeah, I guess we have to determine whether this is a essential Star Trek the Original Series viewing.
We certainly do. So, again, I find myself in a very tough position.
Okay.
I think that there's a lot of great Scotty moments in this episode that really help to define him, help to round him out. We don't usually get that much Scotty in positions of authority. We get him doing heroic things. We get him, doing engineering things. But we don't get a lot of Scotty in a command capacity where he's making these crucial decisions. And I think some of the stuff that happened in this episode is fantastic for Scotty's character. We got Spock's new mind control powers.
Yes.
That we're going to see come up again. And, and of course, there's, as with a lot of episodes, there's a lot of great Kirk moments. But for me, it's a tough call. I kind of don't know which way I'm going on this one. I know I've done this in a couple of other episodes, but I'm having a tough time with it.
All right. Well,
where are you?
On top of what you said, we also have the introduction of the official introduction of the United Federation of Planets.
True.
And we also have General Order 24.
Oh, yes,
which may not come into play a lot, but I think it's an important order in that it shows that there is an order that exists that basically tells who's ever in command that they've been ordered to destroy a planet.
Yeah, that's pretty serious.
So I think you couple that with all of your character moments, and just the introduction of the United Federation of Planets, actually detailed for us. And I think that for me, this falls on the essential side, and it's also a really good episode.
Okay, well, you know what? I'm sold.
Okay,
and I will go essential on this as well for all the reasons that we just talked about. So. Pretty cool stuff. Another essential episode in the can.
Excellent. So I guess that brings us to a close. And we will be back next week for, a Taste of Paradise?
This Side of Paradise.
This Side of Paradise,
and,
yes.
Don't forget, if you want to give us some feedback or talk a little bit more about this episode, hit us up on Facebook at the Tricorder Transmissions or on Twitter at TTT_pod. And we'll see you guys next week. Thanks for listening.
There was a Vietnam War going on. There was a civil rights struggle going on. There was the hippie movement going on in America. Movements that were tearing the country apart. Star Trek was about the only show that was infusing and enriching the television medium with pertinence, substance, and contemporary relevance. I personally was involved in those movements. I was involved in the anti-Vietnam movement, despite the fact that I did the Green Berets. Star Trek, by using science fiction as a metaphor, was reflecting the reality of the times. And this on a medium that was characterized by the chairman of the Federal Communication Commission as the vast wasteland.